Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this special edition of Random Wrestling Talk, episode number 26. Today, I came up with an idea to upload here today about talking about my top 10 decade moments or matches that occurred in professional wrestling across TNA, WWE, and New Japan Wrestling, which is the top 10 that I put in here. I'm going to start out with 10 being the first one to talk about, 1 being the last. So, let's get things started, ladies and gentlemen. I think you guys might appreciate what I have to say. You might not agree with my top 10 moments or matches or whatever that happened in the last 10 years from 2010 all the way up to 2020. So let's get started. Number 10 was, I wrote down that I think that Nick Aldis, formerly known as Magnus in TNA, defeating AJ Styles and Sting in such a crappy fashion. I mean, he had the entire TNA locker room come out and fuck over AJ Styles and Sting. This occurred during the year of 2014, around January, I believe. This is really the turning point of when TNA started going downhill, ultimately, where anybody who's anybody could notice this company was going in the fucking shitter. I was a big fan from 2006 all the way up to 2013. By late 2013, I started to notice some things were going radically wrong with this company. And that is when I started to dislike TNA a lot. Till a couple of years later, I started watching them again. This moment with Nick Aldis, I mean, he beat two of the biggest names in professional wrestling today. But the way he beat him was fucking horrible fashion. Now, you may question me, why am I picking that as my number 10? Because that was the most shocking thing I have ever seen in my life. They had an entire locker room screw over AJ Styles in one match, and then a couple of nights later, shows later, he actually faces fucking Sting, and the entire locker room again attacks Sting and beats the living hell out of him, disgracing both competitors. I don't understand why they went that route, but that's what happened. So that was a big turning point in TNA's history of being in business for their promotion. So I thought that was a very good idea to throw in there. Number 9. This happened very recently. It was about a year or two ago. It was Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa's storyline for 2018 mostly. These guys competed over a friendship that was great. They became tag team partners very early, right into the get-go of joining NXT, and then they became tag team champions. Eventually that led to Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa becoming enemies because of Tommaso Ciampa turning heel. Eventually that led to Johnny Gargano getting screw over at a multiple, and I mean multiple, NXT World Championship matches by Tommaso Ciampa, may I add. So this led to a series of matches through the Royal Rumble all the way up to WrestleMania in 2018 that had a series of great matches. Very entertaining shit. It also led to through the summer as well. They actually went all the way up to the end of the summer by SummerSlam weekend. They were competing over the NXT World Heavyweight Championship. I thought that was a great fucking storyline. One of the best storylines of the decade, probably. The reason why I'm not putting in the top 5 is because there's a lot of other big moments that I think you all may appreciate or understand why I chose these in the top 5. Number 8 was the creation of NXT. Of course, this was going to be above Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa's rivalry of 2018 because of the fact if it wasn't for NXT, we would have never seen this rivalry ever existed. At least in the fashion that we saw it on NXT. NXT has produced one of the best wrestlers in the world. Gimmicks, characters, storylines, you name it. NXT has done it all throughout the decade since 2014, since their inception. They have been fantastic on the WWE Network. And they've done and displayed what professional wrestling should look like in today's generation of professional wrestling. So they did a fantastic job there. That's why this is number 8. I understand. Maybe some of you will have disagreement with that pick of mine. I'm probably assuming that some people may say that should be number 2. Biggest moment of the decade was the creation of NXT. I'm not going to say that because there are quite a few other things that have come about. So, listen to the rest of what I have to say before you turn the video off. Number 7 was HBK retiring his match with Undertaker at WrestleMania 26, which was the sequel to one of the greatest matches probably in WrestleMania history. That's debatable, though. There has been a lot of great WrestleMania matches in its existence, but that was one of the better matches in WrestleMania history. And this was the follow-up to that match from WrestleMania 25 into WrestleMania 26 with Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker. This matchup was not as good as the first, but still a nice driven storyline delivered by the WWE creative. Was probably the one of better things that happened in 2010 outside of one other thing that I'll mention leading into this. But it was a very emotional situation with Shawn Michaels, being it was his last match. Nobody was expecting it to happen. Maybe people were expecting it. I kind of was. I kind of figured that much. I didn't think they were going to throw a retirement match for Shawn Michaels stipulation and have him beat The Undertaker's undefeated streak at WrestleMania. I don't believe that would have been, that wouldn't have been the result of that match. So, yeah. Another thing that occurred in the same year that brought about big stars that unfortunately did not turn into much of anything, but was a great moment in 2010 when the Nexus, with Wade Barrett leading that faction, attacking John Cena on Monday Night Raw. May I add, they actually had a boost in ratings, which they didn't have for a very long while. Most of the time they'd have a small little change in the ratings going upwards, increasing or decreasing, fluctuating up and down. This episode where the Nexus attacked John Cena created a huge buzz and actually increased the ratings by a large margin. So it was one of their biggest increases in their existence, not existence, but on Monday Night Raw for a very long time. So that is my spiel on that. That was a very entertaining moment because one of the top stars, John Cena, was willing to take a fucking ass beating by a bunch of freaking nobodies known as the Nexus. And that storyline was pretty damn good. I will give WWE that. They fucked up in the end, of course, which they always do, with the Nexus and building them into mega stars. That was a major situation. John Cena, unfortunately, me being a fan of John Cena, did not do them any good. He legitimately buried them based on his thoughts and feelings about it. I don't think it wasn't done intentionally, at least from what I know. Edge wanted to push the Nexus, and John Cena wanted to beat the Nexus and actually make them look weak because he didn't think that they would get over. Whatever. I think he made a very big mistake with that because Nexus was actually a great heel faction in the WWE at that time. 2011 on Monday Night Raw, John Cena got not attacked. He got distracted by CM Punk. In 2011, he had a tables match with R-Truth. R-Truth managed to defeat him with the distraction of CM Punk, and after the match was over, CM Punk delivered the big catchphrase that everyone knows as the pipe bomb, talking about how WWE sucks, how creative is totally boring and illogical, and everything that we're preaching about wrestling today. Not to mention, he also said that if Vince McMahon died, WWE may actually become a better company, but then again, if it's run by Triple H and his wife, it probably would get turned into shit, which I disagree on that part. I think Triple H will provide a great time in professional wrestling. If you look at his ideas and what he's been doing with NXT, he has been doing a fantastic job. But anyway, that's number 5 with CM Punk's pipe bomb, which was absolutely one of the better promos in WWE history. Or actually in the decade, I would say. Number 4, Edge retiring in 2011 as well. This was a major retirement situation that nobody, and I mean nobody, was expecting to see happen. Nobody knew what Edge's problem was. Edge was having bad circulation issues with his arm. I think it was his right arm. He wasn't feeling anything. He had a problem in his neck. His whole entire spine was fucked up and shit like that. So he had some major health issues. Now we're talking about in the new decade that Edge may come back for a return to wrestling. Which is totally fucking insane. But it's a possibility. Will it happen? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think Edge should return back to wrestling. He doesn't need to do anything. And the state of what WWE is in, it'll ruin his career and what he has built with his legacy. You want to give him a moment where he's a Hall of Famer, which I think he already is. I think he was put in the Hall of Fame already. Yeah, I believe he was already. I think he's already a legend. Put in the Hall of Fame and all that shit. So, yeah, I mean, there's nothing Edge needs to do with his career at this point. Because if he comes back, he's taking the risk of possibly ruining his career and his legacy of what he has built. And I don't think that is something he needs to do or put his body through at this point when he's got so many other things he could get involved in that doesn't involve with him throwing his body around. Maybe if he wants to become a creative writer or doing anything with help creating new stars, and he's got an in-touch thing for that, then I would be cool with that. But him wrestling at this point, as much as I'd love to see him in person in a wrestling ring, like him performing at WrestleMania 36 with me going to see that, I still do not approve the idea for his own well-being, not for mine. But for him, I don't think it's good for him to come back to wrestle. He has done everything possible known to man in the wrestling business. He has nothing more to prove or do in the WWE or any other promotion for that matter. But like I said, creative ideas, do what Shawn Michaels is doing now. He's taking over NXT UK. That's cool. Him doing anything else but that, I'm totally against. I don't think he should. Just for his own well-being. Number 3. Now, people are going to be surprised by this. Number 3 was the Bullet Club being formed. This is New Japan Wrestling. If you're not familiar with the Bullet Club, well, get familiarized with them. They're one of the biggest factions in New Japan Wrestling. They're basically the NWO version from WCW. That's who the Bullet Club really is. Now, the reason why I picked Bullet Club as the third big thing in the decade is real simple. They have come up with big name superstars in their factions that have gotten them very noticeable to the wrestling community. Marty Scurll, Cody Rhodes, Adam Cole, baby, which is he was already noticeable if you paid attention to Ring of Honor. Fucking AJ Styles, with him joining the Bullet Club, he created a new persona of AJ Styles. AJ Styles became a major dick heel. You also came about Kenny Omega. Nobody fucking knew who Kenny Omega was until 2017 when they pretty much, 2016, excuse me. 2016 when they annihilated AJ Styles out of the Bullet Club faction. You also had Finn Balor, who was part of that original club when it first started, of Bullet Club. He was a big centerpiece of that faction. So there has been a lot of superstars that have come into this faction and made it relevant. The Young Bucks, they are a humongous tag team that were part of the Bullet Club. Unbelievable amount of names has performed for this faction and worked under this brand name of the Bullet Club. And you cannot tell me that that is not a humongous moment of the decade. They were created and built up through one Finn Balor, number one. He was the leader of the fucking group originally. And it helped bring Finn Balor up into the WWE's microscope of people that would notice him. Scouts from the WWE were very interested in this guy. He had a persona that was beyond belief of a total dick. Everything that Finn Balor did with Bullet Club helped him become Finn Balor in WWE. At least with NXT. WWE main roster, forget it. Anybody in the main roster nowadays is just fucking dead. That's all I have to say on that. But Bullet Club has created some big moments in New Japan Wrestling. They had some great matches under that banner with that group being formed in New Japan Wrestling, and has brought a lot of attention from the United States over to New Japan Wrestling. If it wasn't for New Japan Wrestling having the Bullet Club, I don't think I would even have any interest in New Japan Wrestling. They brought so much back into professional wrestling, especially for New Japan, to get attention on them. And eventually, if they can build a United States base here in the U.S., they will start bringing in a bigger crowd of fans into their promotion, even though they're a foreign wrestling company. And I think that would be fucking awesome, especially for wrestling fans like myself and everyone else that watches wrestling. There you go. Moment or match of the decade, whatever way you want to put this is really just kind of moments or matches within the decade of 2010 to 2020. Omega versus Okada number 2 for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship match. I believe this event happened in 2017. Yeah, 2017, because the match that Kenny Omega won the world title from Okada was actually in 2018. But in 2017, they had a second match following up from Wrestling Kingdom, which occurred during the summer. It was in June. And they had a 1 hour, non-stop beatdown of these two guys, killing each other, hitting each other stiff in the ring, and just whacking each other up like fucking dogs with non-stop clotheslines. High flipping maneuvers by Kenny Omega and all kinds of other shit that occurred in this matchup that went for a full-on hour with no decision. It was a draw. It was one of the biggest matches that were ever... It was one of the biggest matches probably of the decade. I will really say that. If it wasn't for one other moment that happened in professional wrestling in this decade, this would be number 1, but this is actually number 2. And the reason why is because this match went for a full hour draw, and nothing came of it. No one won anything, and that was that. That was a humongous moment in wrestling. Dave Meltzer, who is one of the biggest wrestling critiques in the business, rated this 11 out of 10 stars. He said this match was picture perfect. There was nothing he could see in this match that you could say it was wrong with it. I have to agree with him. It was fucking unreal. It was one of the greatest matches of the decade. Now, here's number one. This is the number one moment of all time in professional wrestling. Now, granted, this match wasn't great by any means, but for the ending it had, and for what happened at WrestleMania 30, will live in infamy. Brock Lesnar defeating The Undertaker's undefeated streak. Who the fuck saw that coming? Did you? I know I sure as hell didn't. I didn't figure Brock Lesnar would have been the guy to defeat him. Now, there's a lot of talks going on around the wrestling industry and rumors that went on during that time. That was rumored that that Undertaker and Brock Lesnar did not want him to lose. Brock Lesnar wanted The Undertaker to go over on him. He didn't think he should have been the one beating him for that undefeated streak, which I commend Brock Lesnar, because a lot of times these days, he don't seem to give a flying fuck about professional wrestling at all. He's just there for a paycheck. He has a couple of minute matches that are like 2-3 minutes, and then he's off to the races somewhere else, just hanging out, doing whatever, and getting paid to sit on his fucking ass. That is not the Brock Lesnar I used to know and like. During the here and now. This Brock Lesnar back in 2004, I was okay with. Brock Lesnar in 2012, he did some really good matches with Triple H that were actually decent. But lately, his matches have not cut it for me. They don't have any substance to it, and they're meaningless garbage. I just would like someone that's new and fresh to take the fucking title off of him, and we can forget about Brock Lesnar. Bring Brock Lesnar for some big mega matches or whatever the fuck you want to do for rivalry matches, and keep him away from the world title. For God's sakes. But this moment, Taker losing to Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 30, I think is probably the number one biggest moment in the wrestling decade from 2010 to 2020. That's how I feel that should be number one on anyone's list. Because at this point in time, Undertaker is still performing in events where he has no purpose anymore. He doesn't feel important. You take that WrestleMania 30 away from him, and you kept him on that winning streak, he'd have a purpose to be on the shows. At this point, people don't see any point in Undertaker being around. His moment of retirement should have been when he lost the undefeated streak at WrestleMania. And unfortunately, that was not the case. He continued to perform, and then he lost to Roman Reigns, which, holy shit, people went off on that. I didn't like that either. I mean, you're going to give him a second loss to Roman Reigns? That's a little fucking stupid. But, yeah, that's my top 10 of the decade. Let me know what you guys felt about my top 10. I know probably some people will disagree with it. Some people would be okay with it. What have you. Leave your comments and opinions down below. I'll get back to you on that. I always do. I appreciate one of my subscribers, Michael, who leaves me a comment on every video I provide to you guys. Thank you very much for the comments, Michael. It's a very appreciated, and I appreciate your kind comments that you give me every single time. Hit the like button if you like this video as well, and hit the subscribe button if you're not subscribed to the channel. And I thank you very much for watching, and have a great night, guys. Bye.